You know what's odd? Some of the most insightful, emotionally aware people you'll ever come across didn't build those skills through therapy sessions, self-help books, or years of spiritual practice. They built them because, at a certain point in their lives, they simply had no other choice. Their minds were conditioned, not by intention, but by circumstances that forced them to read people, anticipate emotions, and think several moves ahead just to feel a sense of safety. Psychologists have begun referring to this as traumatic intelligence, and if that term is new to you, that's precisely why this video is worth your attention. Here's the core psychological idea. Trauma doesn't only leave scars. In many cases, it also sharpens the mind. Research in developmental psychology indicates that children who grow up in unstable or emotionally turbulent environments often develop an elevated sensitivity to social cues, emotional patterns, and nonverbal communication. Their brains, particularly the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, are shaped early on to pick up on subtle signals that most people never even notice. The outcome is a form of intelligence that appears almost invisible on the surface, but runs extraordinarily deep beneath it. The first sign is that you can read a room before a single word is spoken. You walk into a space and something inside you shifts. A quiet, automatic alertness. You catch the tension in someone's shoulders or a micro-expression that flickers across someone's face for barely a fraction of a second. This isn't intuition in any mystical sense. It's pattern recognition. Your brain was conditioned from an early age to scan your surroundings for emotional information, because at some point, that scanning was what kept you safe. The second sign is that you are deeply tuned in to other people's needs, often before they're even aware of them themselves. You notice when someone is hurting, even when they insist they're fine. You pick up on a shift in someone's energy before they've had a moment to process it internally. Psychologists describe this as hyper-empathy, and it tends to emerge in people who grew up needing to closely monitor the emotional states of caregivers or those around them. You learn to feel others because your world required it. The third sign is that you are a remarkably capable problem solver, especially when everything is falling apart. When chaos erupts around you, something inside you becomes still and strategic. You don't freeze up, you adapt. This is the nervous system doing something quite remarkable. People who faced early adversity often develop what researchers call stress inoculation, meaning their brains become better calibrated for high-pressure situations because those situations were simply their everyday reality. You don't spiral when the stakes are high. Instead, you shift into a composed, methodical mode. You assess what's in front of you, identify the best available path forward, and move without hesitation. The stress you lived through early on quietly prepared you for moments exactly like this. What others experience as overwhelming disorder, you experience as a problem waiting to be solved. The fourth sign is that you think deeply about human behavior, almost automatically. You analyze why people act the way they do. You revisit conversations. You search for meaning behind actions that most people wouldn't give a second thought. This level of psychological depth isn't accidental. It was built through years of trying to make sense of unpredictable behavior from the people closest to you. You became a student of human nature because understanding people felt necessary for your own sense of stability. As a result, you've developed the ability to anticipate how someone will respond before it even happens. You can read how a person will react based on their patterns, their energy, and their body language. This makes you highly adaptable in social situations because you're often already one step ahead emotionally. Your ability to read and respond to people has become second nature to you. The fifth sign. Pause and take this in for a moment. Everything described so far, the perceptiveness, the empathy, the depth of analysis, none of it is weakness wearing the costume of strength. These are genuine cognitive and emotional adaptations, and they reflect just how powerfully the human brain responds to lived experience. You didn't develop this intelligence out of privilege or comfort. You developed it because your environment demanded nothing less. What others might dismiss as being too sensitive or overthinking is actually your mind working at a remarkably high level to stay safe, to adapt, and to understand the world more precisely than most people ever will. The sixth sign is that you have a highly refined sense of self-reliance. You don't wait to be rescued. You build your own solutions, quietly and independently. This self-sufficiency often catches people off guard, but it makes complete sense from a developmental standpoint. When the environment in childhood wasn't consistently safe or supportive, the brain learned to internalize resourcefulness. Depending on others felt dangerous, so competence became the natural default. You may have figured out early on that asking for help wasn't always a realistic option, so you found your own way forward. You built a quiet inner strength that doesn't require external validation or support to function. While others reach outward for reassurance or direction, you tend to look inward. And that inner steadiness often becomes your greatest advantage when things get difficult. The harder things get, the more capable you become of forging your own path through them. The seventh sign is that you experience emotions with an intensity that most people around you simply don't seem to. Music lands differently for you. Injustice registers on a physical level. A small act of genuine kindness from a stranger can move you in ways that are hard to explain. This emotional depth is one of the defining features of traumatic intelligence. The amygdala, which governs emotional processing, becomes highly sensitized through years of intense emotional activation. The result is a person who doesn't merely observe life, they feel it at a frequency most people never access. Your emotional awareness is finely calibrated, and that depth can feel like both a gift and a burden at the same time. On one side, you experience the world with a richness and intensity that's rare. On the other, it can leave you vulnerable to emotional exhaustion in ways that are hard for others to fully understand. You carry the weight of injustice, of pain, of beauty, often absorbing far more than you realize. The eighth sign is that trust doesn't come easily to you, but when it does, it means everything. Your threshold for trust is higher than most people's. This isn't pessimism or cynicism. It's a calibrated, learned response. Cognitive psychologists refer to this as adaptive skepticism. Your brain learned early that signals of safety weren't always what they appeared to be, so it built internal filters. And those filters, though they can sometimes feel isolating, also mean that the connections you do allow tend to be genuine, meaningful, and unusually durable. Once someone earns your trust, your loyalty is unwavering. The relationships you build rest on honest, solid foundations because you've learned, through experience, to be careful about who you let in. You don't offer trust freely, but when you do, it becomes one of the most unshakable bonds a person can have.